He kissed my forehead, said, "Have fun at your girls' night." And I believed him until the hotel called my name. There are moments that feel too ordinary to suspect they'll be the hinge your whole life swings on. That night began with comfort, the kind that feels almost cinematic in its simplicity. The kitchen was warm, my hair still damp from the shower, his voice soft and teasing as he reminded me not to forget my charger, my lipstick, my laughter. He always said he loved when I laughed, that it filled the house with something alive. And I believed him because believing him was easier than questioning what hid behind those steady blue eyes. He leaned in close, the smell of cedar and mint on his skin, and said the words every woman wants to hear before stepping out the door. "You deserve this night, babe. Just relax." He brushed a strand of hair behind my ear and smiled too long, too tenderly. It should have felt safe. Instead, it felt rehearsed. I told myself I was imagining it. The way his hand lingered on my waist as though it might be for the last time, the way his eyes flicked to the clock as if something was counting down. Love has a way of muting our instincts. We crave the story we've been promised, not the one quietly unfolding beneath it. So I chose to see devotion instead of distance, affection instead of anxiety. I kissed him once more, told him not to wait up, and stepped into the crisp night air with a lightness I didn't realize was about to disappear. The drive to Madison's apartment was wrapped in that Friday night calm, streetlights humming over empty roads, a low song on the radio, the kind of peace that comes when you believe your life is steady. My phone buzzed once. His name glowed on the screen. "Love you. Have fun." I smiled, texted back a heart, and parked. I was still smiling when the phone rang again. An unfamiliar number this time. Local area code. A man's voice on the other end. "Good evening, ma'am," he said, his tone professional, polite, the kind you hear from someone reading a script. "This is Brian from the Ashland Grand Hotel. We're just confirming the issue with your husband's keycard." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. "I'm sorry?" My voice cracked into a laugh that wasn't really a laugh. "You must have the wrong person." He paused, shuffled papers maybe, and then said my name, my full name. "No, ma'am. The reservation's under you. Joint check-in, same address. Mr. Cole arrived earlier today." The words didn't register right away. They hung there, suspended between logic and panic, while the night outside blurred into nothing. My name. His name. One room? It didn't make sense. I wasn't married, and Cole hadn't said a word about any hotel. "You're sure?" I asked, but my voice came out smaller this time. "Positive," he said. "Would you like to authorize the additional guest?" There it was. The word that ripped. The floor out from under me. Guest. My pulse stuttered. I couldn't feel my hands. There had to be some mistake. Maybe there was another Cole with the same last name, the same address. Maybe this was a glitch, a mix-up, a ridiculous coincidence. I wanted to believe that. I needed to. Because the alternative, that the man who just kissed my forehead and sent me off with a smile was lying, felt too large to hold. I ended the call before he could say another word. My reflection in the car window looked like someone I didn't recognize. Pale, wide-eyed, frozen between denial and dread. Madison texted, "You close? Wine's ready." My thumbs hovered over the keyboard, but instead of replying, I typed, "Not feeling great. Might skip tonight." The lie slid out smooth as water. Funny how lies always do when you've just swallowed someone else's. The drive to the hotel was a blur of headlights and rain-specked glass. The city moved around me, indifferent. I replayed every detail of the evening like evidence in a trial. His tone, his glance, the way he touched my shoulder. Each memory felt rewritten, its meaning twisted. Love had been replaced by doubt so fast it made me dizzy. I kept telling myself I just needed to see, to confirm, to prove my fears wrong. But somewhere deep down, the part of me that had already started grieving knew what I would find. When I walked into the Ashland Grand, the air smelled of lemon polish and old carpet. A pianist played something slow in the corner, too elegant for the knot tightening in my chest. The lobby lights were warm, forgiving, as if the building itself didn't want to witness what was about to happen. A woman behind the desk smiled the way people do when they've seen everything and learned to pretend they haven't. "Good evening, ma'am. Checking in?" My voice felt like it belonged to someone else. "There's a reservation under my name, Cole." She clicked through her screen, nodded toward a man in a navy suit. The manager. Brian will help you. Brian approached with that easy professionalism that comes from repetition. "Ah, Mrs. Cole," he said, his words smooth, unknowing. "We've sorted out the key card issue. I can get you a new one." For a second, I couldn't breathe. Mrs. Cole. The title clung to me like something foreign. I should have corrected him, told him he was mistaken, that I wasn't Mrs. Anything. But the truth was too jagged to touch. He extended the card toward me, and when our hands brushed, I felt the weight of every unasked question pressing down on my chest. I smiled because that's what women are taught to do when everything collapses. Stay polite, stay composed, don't let the world see you bleed. But inside, everything was shaking. I took the key card, thanked him, and turned toward the elevators. The walls seemed to hum with a low electric tension. I didn't know what I would find upstairs. A mistake, a stranger, or the truth. I'd been pretending not to see for months. When the manager handed me the key card, I realized it wasn't a mistake. It was a message. The room smelled like his cologne, and something unfamiliar, another woman's perfume. The hallway outside the room felt colder than the lobby, the kind of quiet that hums inside your ears when you're trying too hard to pretend you're calm. The carpet muffled my steps, and each one felt like a heartbeat I couldn't control. I'd convinced myself on the elevator ride up that there would be a reasonable explanation, that maybe this was one of those stories that ended with relief instead of heartbreak. But when I slid the key card through the door, heard the soft mechanical click, and pushed it open, that illusion shattered before I even crossed the threshold. The first thing that hit me was the scent. His cologne, the same wood and smoke scent he'd worn since the day we met, wrapped around me like a memory. But underneath it lingered something sweet and floral, unfamiliar, almost suffocating. A woman's perfume. The air itself felt stained with it. My chest tightened as I stepped inside. The room was dim except for the amber light spilling from the bathroom, the sheets on the king-size bed still rumpled, the comforter half slid to the floor. My eyes caught the small details before my brain allowed them meaning. 2 glasses on the nightstand, condensation pooling beneath them, one with a faint lipstick mark the color of rose wine, a room service receipt curled beside them, dinner for 2, chocolate mousse for dessert. The television remote lay sideways on the floor. A black heel, delicate and thin, leaned beneath the armchair like it had been kicked off in a hurry. I stood in the doorway too long, frozen, the sound of my own breathing loud enough to fill the silence. I didn't cry. Not yet. It was as if my body refused to process what my mind already knew. I walked further in, my fingertips grazing the edge of the dresser, grounding myself in the texture of wood, the cool surface of the glass water bottle, the indentation on the pillow that wasn't his. It all screamed of presence, of 2 people, of a story that had unfolded while I was supposed to be at a girls' night he'd encouraged me to attend. For a moment, denial tried to save me. Maybe this wasn't his room. Maybe another couple had been checked in under the wrong name. But then I saw his watch on the desk, the one I'd given him last Christmas, engraved on the back with Foreverall. My reflection wavered in the polished metal, and I felt something inside me collapse quietly. There was no mistake. He'd been here, with her. I sank into the chair by the bed, numbness crawling through me like cold water. My mind replayed the last few weeks in sharp flashes, the late-night meetings that ran too long, the sudden interest in going to the gym before work, the way he'd started locking his phone when he never used to. The tenderness that had seemed deeper lately. Maybe it wasn't guiltless love. Maybe it was a farewell disguised as devotion. Every "I love you" echoed now with something I hadn't noticed before. Apology. I remembered the night he'd looked at me across the dinner table and said, "You make me feel like the luckiest man alive." I'd believed him because I wanted to. Trust isn't blind, it's willingly blindfolded. A sound escaped me, something between a laugh and a sob. I pressed my palms over my eyes, trying to breathe through the disbelief. This was supposed to be our quiet season, the time we'd been saving for, planning for. We were even talking about moving in together. The absurdity of it made my throat ache. I stood again, restless, searching for something tangible to anchor myself. My gaze landed on a folded napkin on the nightstand, a hotel pen resting across it like an afterthought. I picked it up. Scribbled on the corner in his handwriting was a phone number I didn't recognize. No name, just digits and a small heart beside it. The shock that began as disbelief started curdling into anger. The scent of perfume seemed stronger now, almost mocking. I imagined her, whoever she was, sitting right where I stood, laughing, tilting her head back while he poured her wine into one of those glasses. Did he tell her the same things? That she made him feel lucky? Did she know he had someone waiting for him at home who thought she was loved? My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped the napkin. I wanted to tear the room apart, to erase every trace of her. But I didn't. Because even in betrayal, there's a strange paralysis, a need to understand before you react. That's when I noticed something small glinting near the lamp. A flash of silver, half hidden under a receipt. It was a USB drive. Ordinary, unassuming, but out of place among the mess. My heartbeat quickened as I picked it up, turning it over in my fingers. There was handwriting on the label, faint but deliberate, like someone had taken time to etch each letter. It wasn't his handwriting. It wasn't mine. For a long second, I thought about leaving it there. I'd seen enough. Proof, pain, humiliation. It was all too much. But curiosity, or maybe desperation, wouldn't let me drop it. I took one step toward the door, USB in hand, intending to walk away, to forget the scent, the glasses, the lipstick mark, the life that had just cracked open. Then the light caught the words scrawled across the tape again, and I froze. I almost left a USB there, until I saw what was written on it. For her. I didn't want to plug it in, but curiosity felt safer than ignorance. The drive home was the longest of my life. Every red light felt like a trap. Every passing car like a witness to something I couldn't yet name. The USB lay on the passenger seat beside me, catching the light from the street lamps. It looked harmless, small, ordinary, just plastic and metal, but I could feel its weight as though it carried a pulse. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I pulled into my driveway and the motion sensor light flickered on. The familiar warmth of my house, once comforting, suddenly felt intrusive, like a stage where someone had been watching me perform without knowing it. I stood in the kitchen for what felt like an hour before I could make myself move. My phone buzzed once with a text from Cole. "How's girls' night? Miss you already." The casual lie made my stomach twist. I typed nothing back. The laptop sat on the table, the screen dark. For a moment I considered throwing the USB into the garbage, walking away, pretending the night hadn't happened. But then I thought of the perfume, the lipstick mark, the watch, the unmistakable truths already circling me, and I knew pretending would be its own kind of cowardice. I plugged the USB in. The soft chime of it connecting felt louder than thunder. A single folder appeared on the screen labeled private. Inside were a series of files, some photos, some videos. My fingers hovered over the trackpad, trembling. I clicked one at random. The image loaded slowly. Cole, smiling, holding a glass of wine. Next to him, a woman I didn't recognize, dark hair, sharp smile, wearing the same perfume that had clung to that hotel room. My pulse pounded in my throat. There were more photos, dozens, different nights, same woman, same intimacy. It wasn't just cheating, it was something practiced, documented, stored. I wanted to look away, but something compelled me forward. The next file was a video. I hesitated, then pressed play. The camera was shaky, handheld. Cole and the woman laughed in a hotel mirror, his arm around her waist. I watched long enough to understand what it meant, then slammed the laptop shut so hard the table rattled. I stood there in silence, tears burning behind my eyes, anger boiling beneath the humiliation. But then I noticed something, another file at the bottom of the folder, unlike the others. It was labeled simply home.mp4. For a second I thought it must be a mistake. My house? Why would he have a video named that? Against every instinct, I reopened the laptop and clicked it. The screen filled with an image that didn't make sense at first. A dimly lit living room, familiar furniture, a frame on the wall that looked like mine. It took a full 10 seconds before the truth hit me. It was mine, my living room. The angle came from the corner near the bookshelf, the exact place where I'd once found him, fixing the Wi-Fi router. The video wasn't a memory. It was surveillance. Me, walking across the room, unaware. Me, sitting on the couch reading. Me, changing the channel, humming to myself. Every movement so normal, it became horrifying in its ordinariness. I slammed the laptop closed again, but the images were burned into my mind. The anger I'd felt in the hotel evaporated, replaced by something sharper. Fear. This wasn't just betrayal. This was intrusion, violation. I checked the corners of the room as if tiny eyes were blinking back from the shadows. How long had it been there? How long had he been watching me in my own home? I felt my knees weaken and sat down, shaking. I wanted to call someone, but who? I couldn't call Cole, obviously. Madison? She'd tell me to go to the police, but I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet, to turn my life into a headline or a police report. That's when another name came to mind. Nate, Cole's best friend. He'd always been kind, the type who offered to help set up furniture or feed my cat when we went out of town. He'd once told me, half joking, "If he ever breaks your heart, you call me first." I didn't think he meant it literally, but right then I needed someone who knew Cole and knew what he was capable of. Nate answered on the second ring, his voice low, sleepy. I told him everything in a rush, the hotel, the photos, the video. He didn't interrupt, just breathed slowly on the other end until I stopped shaking. "Stay put," he said finally. "I'm coming over. Don't do anything until I get there." I didn't argue. Within 20 minutes he was at my door, hair disheveled, wearing a gray hoodie. He looked genuinely worried. He listened as I replayed the video, his jaw tightening, his eyes scanning the room like he expected to find hidden cameras himself. "He's lost it," he muttered. "I'll help you go through his stuff. Maybe there's more." His calmness was soothing. For the first time that night, I felt a fragile sense of relief, as though someone was on my side. He even made me tea, sat beside me on the couch, and told me I didn't have to face this alone. His voice was steady, his presence grounding. I almost started to believe I could breathe again. But as he leaned closer, his hand brushing my shoulder in what was meant to be comfort, something caught my eye, the soft blue glow from his phone screen on the table beside him. A name had flashed across it before he could turn it over. Cole. My breath caught. His phone lit up again, the same name, the same contact photo, the man who destroyed everything, calling the only person I thought I could trust. When he leaned in to comfort me, his phone lit up, with my boyfriend's name on it. 2 men, 1 secret, and suddenly I wasn't sure which betrayal would break me first. The sound of his name glowing on Nate's phone split the air between us like a lightning bolt. For a second, I told myself it had to be some kind of coincidence. Maybe Cole was calling because he couldn't reach me. Maybe Nate had forgotten to mention something. But the look that flickered across Nate's face, shock, then guilt, then that quick flash of calculation people get when they're deciding what to say, told me exactly what I didn't want to know. My pulse beat in my ears as I forced my voice to stay steady. "Why is he calling you?" He didn't answer right away. He just silenced the screen and slipped the phone into his hoodie pocket. "It's nothing," he said, his tone too calm. "We talk sometimes. You know that." But I did know, and what I knew was that Cole barely talked to anyone about his relationship, least of all Nate. They were friends built on surface-level jokes and bar nights, not late-night calls and hidden numbers. "Nate," I said again, this time slower, lower. "Why is he calling you at midnight while I'm here showing you proof that he's been spying on me?" The tremor in my voice betrayed me. I wanted answers, but what I got instead was pity. He exhaled, rubbed the back of his neck, and looked away. "It's not what you think," he said. "Cole asked me to check on you. He said you'd gotten paranoid about something, that you might overreact if you found something online." Overreact. That word hit me harder than the hotel receipt had. It was the same tone Cole used when he dismissed my instincts, the same soft, condescending patience that turns women into cautionary tales. "You two talked about me?" I asked, my voice sharper now. "About me, like I'm, what, some unstable experiment?" Nate stepped closer, hands raised as if he were calming a frightened animal. No, listen, he didn't tell me everything. He just said there were things going on at work, that you were stressed. I swear, I didn't know about the hotel or the video." His words sounded rehearsed, but his eyes carried something else. Fear. And that was what made my stomach twist. He wasn't just covering for Cole. He was afraid of something too. That realization cooled my rage just enough for logic to slip back in. I took a step back, creating space between us, watching him like a puzzle piece that no longer fit. "Tell me something," I said quietly. "Why that hotel? Why the Ashland Grand? There are hundreds in this city." His eyes flickered for a split second before he looked away, and it was enough. "You know something?" I pressed. "What is it?" He shook his head too quickly. "It's just a coincidence. But the thing about coincidences is that they don't hold up under pressure." I remembered suddenly a company dinner I'd attended 3 months ago at that same hotel. Cole had picked me up afterward, claiming he was nearby meeting a client. I hadn't thought much of it then, but now, in the wake of everything, it clicked into place like a key turning in a lock. The hotel wasn't random, it was deliberate, connected to me. When Nate left, mumbling something about needing air, I locked the door behind him and leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. My fear had hardened into something colder now. Resolve. I opened my laptop again, inserted the USB, and began searching for patterns: credit card charges, dates, receipts. Every time Cole had told me he was traveling for work, there was a corresponding charge from the Ashland Grand: room service, parking fees, bar tabs. But what chilled me most wasn't the repetition, it was the timing. Each charge lined up with my own travel dates, the ones my office booked months in advance. He hadn't been hiding his affair from me. He'd been staging it around me, using my absence as cover, my calendar as his alibi. Every transaction, every hotel check-in was a reflection of my life, just inverted, corrupted. It wasn't just cheating anymore, it was orchestration. I dug deeper, pulling up the hotel's digital receipts stored in my email archives. That's when I saw something that made my hands go cold. A reservation confirmation, dated 6 weeks earlier, for a weekend I had been in Chicago for a conference. The booking name read Cole and Lila. My heart lurched. Lila was my name. The registered guests, Mr. and Mrs. Cole. It didn't make sense. I hadn't been there. I hadn't booked anything. But the digital signature attached to the reservation was mine, my full name, my work email. It was as if I'd signed off on my own disappearance. I reread it 3 times, hoping I was wrong, that maybe some clerical error could explain it. But it was too perfect, too intentional. The handwriting on the authorization form matched mine exactly. He'd forged me, used my identity to create a version of me that existed only in that hotel room, with him, with someone else, or maybe for something I didn't yet understand. Fear and fury tangled in my chest. This wasn't about infidelity anymore. This was manipulation, control, something far darker. I stared at the receipt until the screen blurred, until all the lines and letters fused into one thought looping through my head. How could I be the guest, in a room I never stayed in? The only thing worse than being cheated on is realizing you were framed for it. When I finally faced Cole, I didn't walk in angry. I walked in armed with the receipt, the screenshots, the timeline neatly folded in my mind like evidence ready for a trial. The house smelled the same as it always did, faintly of coffee and cedar, but everything felt foreign. My hand shook when I turned the key in the lock, not because I was scared of him, but because I was terrified of what his face would look like when I said the words, "I know what you did." He was sitting on the couch, barefoot, sipping beer, the picture of someone unbothered. When he looked up, the casual warmth in his eyes almost made me hesitate. Almost. "Where were you?" he asked lightly, like nothing had changed. I dropped my purse on the counter and stared at him until the silence stretched thin. "At the Ashland Grand," I said. His smile faltered, the tiniest flicker, there and gone before most people would have noticed. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. His tone had that dangerous calm I'd started to recognize, the one that made you question your own reality. "Cole," I said again, voice steady this time. "Stop lying. I've seen the receipts, the charges, the USB." The shift was instant. His posture straightened, his jaw tightened, and then he laughed. It wasn't humor. It was strategy. "You went through my stuff again? Jesus, Lila, do you even hear yourself? You're obsessed with finding problems. You can't handle being happy for 5 minutes without making up some conspiracy." His voice rose, slicing the room open with blame. Every word felt rehearsed, like he'd practiced twisting my sanity into knots. He stood up, pacing now, running a hand through his hair. You know, my boss warned me this might happen. He said you'd been acting weird at the last office party, that maybe you had something to hide. I blinked. Your boss said that? He nodded, and the look on his face, pity disguised as concern, made my stomach turn. You've been under a lot of stress, babe. These trips, the pressure at work, maybe it's getting to you. I love you, but this paranoia, it's not healthy. Paranoia. The word sliced through me, sharp and familiar. It was how abusers win, by making you doubt the ground beneath your own feet. I wanted to scream, to throw every file and photo in his face, but part of me was still stuck between heartbreak and disbelief. You forged my name on that hotel form, I said quietly. You made it look like I was there. He stopped pacing. For a second the mask cracked. His eyes hardened just enough for me to see the truth. Then he smiled again, too easily. If that's what you think, then show me proof. Otherwise, stop embarrassing yourself. Humiliation burned hot under my skin. It wasn't just that he was lying. It was that he was winning, using the same voice he once used to say he loved me. I wanted to believe I could reason with him, that if I found the right words, I could make him admit it. But that was the trap. He wasn't interested in truth. He was interested in control. I turned to leave, and that's when the doorbell rang. The timing was so uncanny it almost felt staged. Standing there was a woman I recognized from a company dinner, a sleek, elegant woman in her 40s with the kind of confidence that comes from being untouchable, Cole's boss's wife. Her smile was polite but too sharp. Leela, she said smoothly, I'm so sorry to drop by unannounced. I just needed to speak to Cole about something work-related. Something about her tone made the hairs on my neck rise. I stepped aside, letting her in, watching Cole's shoulders tense. She gave him a look that wasn't purely professional. Everything all right? She asked, her gaze flicking between us. I heard about the misunderstanding. My stomach twisted. You heard? She tilted her head slightly, studying me the way people do when they already know something you don't. Just company gossip, she said. You know how rumors start. Cole cut in fast. It's fine, Karen. We're fine. She smiled faintly, but there was something in her eyes, an unspoken warning, maybe pity. As she turned to leave, she touched Cole's arm and said quietly, Be careful. It's messy when personal things spill into business. When the door shut behind her, I looked at him. What did she mean by that? He shrugged, forcing a laugh. She's dramatic. You know how she is. But I didn't. And now I wasn't sure how much of anything I knew. That night, he came into the bedroom after an hour of silence, his tone soft again, contrite. I'm sorry, he said, brushing my shoulder, voice low and sweet. I shouldn't have raised my voice. You're right to be upset. Let's start over. He kissed my forehead, that same familiar gesture that once felt safe. Then he pulled a box from the closet, small, white, new, and held up a piece of equipment I didn't recognize. I bought new security cameras, he said, just to make you feel safer. If someone's been in the house, we'll know. It sounded thoughtful, almost loving the way he said it, and I wanted so badly to believe that the gesture meant change. He installed one in the living room, one by the front door, one near the hallway, each little black lens reflecting my face back at me. See? He said, smiling. No more secrets. When I woke the next morning, the house felt still, too still. I walked through the living room, scanning each corner the way he'd shown me. The cameras blinked their tiny red lights in unison, all except one. The one he'd placed facing the bed was gone. The wires hung loose where it had been. The next morning, one camera was missing, the one facing my bed. I checked the footage and saw someone sleeping beside me who wasn't supposed to be there. I didn't mean to open the camera app that morning. I just wanted to prove to myself that the missing camera didn't matter, that maybe it had fallen, or maybe Cole had taken it down to adjust the angle like he said he might. But curiosity isn't innocent. It's the thin thread that unravels everything. The rest of the cameras had been synced to an app on my phone, their icons blinking quietly beside the clock. I tapped the one from the hallway first, then the living room, each showing nothing but silence. Then I scrolled to the bedroom feed, the one I wasn't supposed to have access to anymore. The file was still there. The timestamp read 2:37 a.m. My heart started to hammer as I pressed play. The video was grainy, washed in blue light, but the shapes were clear enough. There I was, curled on my side, asleep. The blankets moved softly with each breath. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the door opened, slowly, deliberately. A shadow slipped into the room. I leaned closer, frozen. It was him, Cole. He moved with practiced ease, careful not to wake me, pausing once at the foot of the bed like he was listening. Then he did something that made my blood run cold. He lay down beside me. It was strange watching yourself sleep while the person who betrayed you pretends you're unaware. I wanted to reach through the screen, to scream, to shove him away, but all I could do was watch as he rested an arm across my waist and closed his eyes like we were still the picture of trust. It wasn't tenderness, it was possession. And knowing it had happened without my knowledge, while I was vulnerable, stripped away whatever sense of safety I had left. I sat there for minutes after the video ended, staring at my reflection in the darkened phone screen. My own face looked foreign, eyes wide, lips trembling, haunted by the stillness I'd seen in that footage. I wasn't just betrayed, I'd been violated in the one place that should have been mine. Fear turned quickly into action. I needed someone to see it, to tell me I wasn't crazy, that what I was looking at was real. So I called the one person who'd always been on my side, Madison, my best friend since college. She answered on the second ring, her voice groggy but soft. "Layla? What's wrong?" I tried to explain, but the words tangled in my throat. Finally, I just said, "I need you to come over, please." She showed up 20 minutes later, still in her sweatshirt, hair tied up, concern etched across her face. When I showed her the video, she covered her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "He's insane. You have to go to the police." But then her expression shifted, just slightly. "Wait, does he still have a key? Maybe he came in to check on you? Maybe he—" "No," I cut in. "He installed those cameras. He said it was for safety, and now one's missing." I pulled up the footage again, pointing to the timestamp. "He came in while I was asleep. He's watching me." Madison nodded slowly, but something about her calmness bothered me. "We'll fix this," she said. "I'll help you. We'll expose him for what he is." She squeezed my hand, her grip a little too tight, her smile a little too controlled. Maybe I was paranoid, or maybe trauma had rewired the way I saw everything. But her tone reminded me too much of his. We spent the afternoon going through my emails, my texts, every digital trail I could think of. Madison took notes, organized screenshots, told me to back everything up on a new USB. "Don't use the old one," she said firmly. "Start clean." I didn't question it then, but later, when I went to retrieve the original USB from my desk drawer, it wasn't there. I tore the room apart, checked every surface, every pocket, but it had vanished. When I asked Madison if she'd moved it, she shook her head too fast. "Maybe you left it at work," she said, avoiding my eyes. "You've been exhausted. Things slip." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe someone was still trustworthy, but the unease coiled tighter in my gut. That night, after she left, I couldn't sit still. My body was alive with a mix of anger and adrenaline. I needed proof, something physical that tied all of this together. I drove back to the Ashland Grand, retracing the same steps from that first night, the lobby lights glaring against the dark windows. The staff had changed shifts, but the desk clerk recognized my name. I told him I'd lost something in the room, something important, and he handed me the spare key with a sympathetic smile. The room was exactly as I left it, too clean, too quiet. I searched every corner, the dresser, the closet, the space behind the nightstand. Nothing. Then, as I bent down near the bed, the light from my phone caught on something small, wedged against the carpet seam. I picked it up, a tiny silver earring, shaped like a teardrop, with a cracked turquoise stone at the center. It wasn't mine, but I'd seen it before. Madison wore them all the time. I sank back on the floor, the room spinning. The scent of perfume, hers, not the stranger's, still lingered faintly in the air. My heartbeat pounded in my throat, and the reality clicked into place so violently it almost knocked the breath out of me. It wasn't just him, it was them. The betrayal didn't come from outside. It was inside my own circle. I sat in my car outside the hotel for a long time after finding that earring, staring at it in the palm of my hand as if I could will it to belong to someone else. But denial can't survive when the evidence is cold metal and memory. I could see Madison in my mind, laughing over drinks, crying during breakups, whispering secrets we promised never to share. She'd been there for everything. She'd seen me raw, unguarded, believing she was my anchor. And now the earring told me what my heart already feared. She wasn't a bystander in this story. She was part of the script. The drive home was a blur, streetlights smeared into yellow streaks across the windshield. Every memory replayed itself, but not the way it happened, the way it really was. Madison suggesting I take girls' nights, always on weekends when Cole had work. Madison being the one who convinced me to trust him again when he disappeared for hours. Madison who had the spare key to my house. I remembered the night I first confided in her about Cole's temper, how she'd hug me tight and whispered, "Just make sure you keep things balanced. Don't give him reasons to question you." At the time, it sounded like advice. Now it sounded like warning. By the time I got home, my heartbreak had gone quiet, the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. Fury lived underneath, cold and measured. I opened my laptop, reopened every file, every piece of data I'd collected. I stopped thinking like a woman scorned and started thinking like someone building a case. There had to be something that tied them together, something I could prove. Hours passed, the glow of the screen painted the room in ghostly light. Then, buried in the metadata of one of Cole's fake hotel receipts, I found it. An email address used for the booking, similar to his but with one extra letter. I traced it back through the contact list, and my stomach dropped. The recovery email was Madison's. Their names, his first, her middle, fused into one digital alias. Every hotel stay, every confirmation message had gone through that shared account. They hadn't just cheated, they'd collaborated. I clicked through until I found the file labeled Surveillance Proof. The title alone made my skin crawl. Inside were video thumbnails, angles from my house, my living room, even the hall outside my bedroom. My hands trembled as I opened one. It was me again, sitting on the couch, phone in hand, smiling at a text. I could hear my own laugh, my own voice. And then a man's voice, Cole's, faint from the doorway. "Who are you texting?" he asked. My response was cut short as the footage ended, but the implication was clear. He'd been recording me for weeks, maybe months, waiting for the right edit to make it look like I was hiding something. That's when it hit me. They weren't just trying to humiliate me. They were building a story where I was the villain. Every moment, every camera, every lie was designed to create proof that I was unfaithful, to make me the crazy cheating girlfriend, while they painted themselves as the victims. The thought sent a chill down my spine, but it also lit something else inside me, a resolve. If they wanted a story, I would rewrite the ending. The next day, I played normal. I texted Madison like nothing had happened. "Hey, thinking about confronting Cole. Will you come over tonight?" She agreed instantly, her reply too quick, too eager. She wanted to be there to control the outcome, to steer the scene. Fine. Let her. I would let her walk straight into the trap she'd built for me. I spent the afternoon gathering everything, screenshots, files, copies of the recordings. Then I borrowed a small voice recorder from work, tucked it into the lining of my coat, and waited. When Cole came home, I greeted him like nothing had changed. He looked surprised but pleased, the kind of man who believes he's already won. He kissed my cheek, asked if I wanted to order dinner. I said yes. He smiled, relaxed, and that's when I noticed it. His car keys on the counter, the same keychain Madison had given him for his birthday last year. The coincidence twisted my stomach again. When he went to shower, I slipped outside to his car, careful not to trigger the motion lights. My hands didn't even shake as I planted the tiny mic beneath the steering wheel, its light blinking faintly like a heartbeat. I needed to hear them together. I needed confirmation spoken out loud, undeniable. I needed to take back control of the narrative they'd tried to write for me. By the time I got back inside, he was in the kitchen, towel around his neck, humming like it was just another night. I smiled, pretending I was still the woman who once trusted that sound. My pulse was steady, my plan clear. The next time he left the house, I'd listen. I'd have my truth. Later, as we sat on the couch, He leaned over to kiss me, and I let him. The scent of his cologne no longer masked the rot underneath. His phone buzzed once on the table beside us, and without thinking, my eyes flicked to the screen. One word flashed before he turned it over. Madison. He didn't notice that I'd seen it. He kept talking, soft, rehearsed, every syllable a lie. And in that moment, every emotion, fear, betrayal, helplessness, condensed into one cold, clear focus. I reached for my phone, pretending to check a message, but instead I opened the recorder app. My thumb hovered over the red circle, ready. When he called her name, not mine, I hit record. What he said on that call changed everything. Because it wasn't about love, it was about money. The recording started with laughter, his low and familiar, the kind of sound that used to feel like home. But this time the tone was different. It wasn't warmth, it was calculation. I sat in my car outside the house, phone in hand, the audio file playing through the speakers. I had hidden the recorder under his dashboard the night before, and now, listening to it, I realized how naive I had been to think this was just about betrayal of the heart. The lies were deeper, colder, transactional. At first, the conversation was light. Cole was talking to Madison, his voice relaxed. "You're sure she bought it?" he asked. Madison's voice followed, soft but laced with nerves. "She suspects, but not enough to go to the police. You have to make her doubt herself first." The words twisted my stomach, but then came the part that shattered everything I thought I knew. "Once the papers are filed, we're in the clear," Cole said. "The payout hits my account, and then yours." I froze. Payout? Papers? It wasn't an affair. It was a setup. Madison's voice again. "You said the insurance needed proof, right? That she was unstable, unfaithful, so she loses her share." Insurance. I replayed that line over and over, my mind scrambling to piece it together. Cole and I had taken out a life and home insurance policy together when we started saving for a house, one that would secure both of us in case of an accident or death. The beneficiary could change if one partner was deemed unfit or fraudulent. I hadn't thought about it since. He had. He'd been engineering every moment, the cameras, the fake hotel receipts, the affair, to build a story that would make me look like a liability. It wasn't just about breaking me emotionally. It was about erasing me financially. I drove straight to the small law office where I'd handled some contracts for work, the one place that still felt neutral. The receptionist must have seen the panic on my face because she let me in right away. My lawyer, Harris, was an older man with the kind of patience that makes you want to trust him. When I told him everything, starting from the hotel call to the recording, he didn't interrupt. He just listened, fingers steepled under his chin. When I finished, he leaned back and exhaled slowly. "You're not crazy," he said. "You're the target." He explained what I was just beginning to understand, that Cole and Madison had likely been staging a pattern of behavior to discredit me. If I went to the police without solid evidence, they could twist it, make me look paranoid. They wanted me reactive, unstable, emotional, because that's what would destroy my credibility. I handed him the USB, the files, everything I'd collected. He transferred copies to his drive and locked the original in a drawer. "This is your leverage," he said, "but we'll need more, something that ties him to the financial motive." It was hard to sit still. I felt like the walls of my life had been stripped bare. Every touch, every word, every memory with Cole now felt retroactively staged. Madison's voice on that tape kept replaying in my head. So calm, so practiced. She wasn't some manipulated accomplice. She was his equal in this. The next few days blurred into one long performance. I went to work, answered texts from both of them as if nothing had changed, smiled through meetings, all while collecting proof. I checked bank records, traced phone calls, even searched Madison's LinkedIn page for connections to Cole's company. And that's when the next thread unraveled. Madison had once worked for Cole's firm, briefly a few years ago. Her departure was sudden, but now the context made sense. The boss's wife, Karen, the one who'd shown up at my house, was on several of Madison's old projects. There was a web forming that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with money, reputation, and silence. I scheduled another meeting with Harris. "They're after something bigger," I said, pacing his office. "This isn't just about me. The company's involved somehow. He nodded, scribbling notes. Then we go higher. Paper trails don't lie. That night, I sat in bed surrounded by printouts, legal pads, and coffee cups gone cold. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that hums before bad news. I felt both powerful and exposed, like someone finally awake after a long sleep, but still trapped in the dark. I kept replaying the recording, searching for any name, any phrase I'd missed. And then I noticed it. Cole mentioned a payment he'd received, not from Madison, not from the company, but from a third party. The transfer came from the same account that booked the hotel, he'd said. I hadn't caught it before. I opened my email, searching for anything that matched. Nothing. But before I could close the laptop, a new notification appeared, an unread message. The sender's name stopped me cold. Brian, Ashland Grand Hotel. My hand shook as I clicked it open. The subject line glowed against the dark screen, stark and deliberate. You deserve to know who paid for that room. When I saw the name on the invoice, I stopped breathing. The email from Brian, the hotel manager, had been sitting in my inbox all night like a loaded weapon. I didn't open it right away. I must have stared at the subject line for an hour, my cursor hovering, my chest tight. You deserve to know who paid for that room. Those words pulsed on the screen as though they carried a heartbeat of their own. When I finally clicked, the message was short, professional, and devastatingly clear. Attached was a single PDF labeled invoice, Ashland Grand, room 417. I downloaded it, my fingers trembling, half hoping it would lead to another dead end. The document opened with the usual details, dates, charges, digital signatures, but then my eyes froze on the last line. Payer L. Mendez. My breath caught. That was my boss, Lauren Mendez, the woman I admired, trusted, looked up to like a mentor. For a moment, my mind refused to connect the dots. There had to be a reason, a clerical error. Maybe she used the company card. Maybe someone else authorized it. But as I scrolled down, the signature stared back at me. Hers, neat and deliberate. My stomach knotted. Lauren wasn't just a boss. She was a friend. She'd taken me under her wing when I joined the firm, given me guidance, opportunities, confidence. She was the one who'd recommended the very hotel for our corporate events. And now her name sat there, proof that she had paid for the same room where Cole and Madison had staged my humiliation. I printed the invoice, my hand shaking, the printer's hum filling the quiet like a taunt. The betrayal didn't make sense. What could she possibly gain from this? And then it hit me, the insurance policy. Lauren was one of the co-signers for the company plan, the one that insured executive assets. If Cole's fraud reached the company, it would destroy their reputation. Maybe she was protecting herself, or maybe, like everyone else in this story, she'd been pulled into his orbit and blackmailed until she couldn't get out. I couldn't sit with the uncertainty. I grabbed my coat and drove to the office even though it was past 9. The building loomed dark except for the glow from Lauren's corner window. She was still there. I didn't knock, I just walked in. She looked up, startled, but recovered quickly, her expression smoothing into calm professionalism. Leela, what are you doing here? I dropped the invoice on her desk. You tell me. Her eyes flicked down to the paper, and for the briefest second, guilt flared in her expression before she masked it with confusion. Where did you get this? From the hotel manager, I said, each word heavy. Why did you pay for that room? She sighed, leaning back in her chair. It's not what you think? That's the same thing everyone keeps saying to me. I snapped. Then tell me what it is, because right now it looks like my boss helped my boyfriend ruin my life. The mask cracked, her shoulders slumped, and the professional facade slipped into something rawer. He threatened me, she said quietly. He found out about a deal from 2 years ago, something the board doesn't know about. He said if I didn't cooperate, he'd leak it, make it look like I falsified documents. Paying for the room was part of the arrangement. He said it would be anonymous. Her voice wavered on the last word, and for a second I almost felt pity. Almost. So you just went along with it? I said. You helped him destroy me to protect yourself? Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't move me. I didn't know he'd take it this far, she said. He said it was for proof, for closure. I wanted to scream, but all that came out was a whisper. Proof of what? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The silence filled in the blanks. Proof of my downfall. Proof of my unfaithfulness. Proof of the narrative he'd built so carefully that even my boss believed him enough to sign the check. I grabbed the invoice and walked out before she could say anything else. The building's elevator ride down felt endless, the mirrored walls reflecting a woman I barely recognized. Betrayed, furious, but alive with purpose. By the time I reached my car, the fury had hardened into resolve. I called Harris, my lawyer, and told him everything. He's closing in, Harris said. You're rattling him. That means he'll make a mistake soon. Stay cautious. But it was already too late for caution. That night, I drove home through the rain, headlights streaking across wet asphalt. The street outside my house was empty. Still, something in me tightened as I pulled into the driveway. The air felt heavier, charged. Inside, the house was dark except for the faint glow from the living room. I turned the corner and froze. Cole was sitting on the couch, casual, legs crossed like he'd been waiting. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. How did you get in? I asked. He smiled. You never changed the locks. The sound of his voice, calm and smooth, cut through the silence. He looked at me the way people do when they've already rehearsed what they're going to say. His eyes gleamed with the confidence of a man who still thought he was in control. Lila, he said, standing slowly, we need to talk, alone. You can't reason with a liar who's already rewritten your reality. He stood in my living room like he owned it, rain dripping from his coat, that same smug calm stitched across his face. The last time I'd seen Cole, he'd been cornered by his own lies, his empire of deceit teetering. But now, there was something different in his posture, a confidence that made my blood go cold. He wasn't here to apologize. He was here to reclaim control. I didn't speak first. I wanted him to feel the weight of the silence, to realize I was no longer the woman who trembled at his explanations. He looked around, eyes grazing the table, the couch, the faint flicker of my phone charging on the counter. You've been busy, he said finally, his voice casual but edged with menace. Digging through things that don't concern you. Things that don't concern me? I repeated, forcing my voice steady. You forged my name, staged an affair, blackmailed my boss, and tried to make me look insane. You don't get to decide what concerns me anymore. He laughed quietly, shaking his head. You always twist things, Lila. You always have. He stepped closer, his tone shifting from mockery to control. I made mistakes, fine. Madison was a mistake, but I was trying to protect you. That word, protect, snapped something inside me. Protect me from what? From my own life? From knowing who you really are? His jaw clenched. From the fallout, he said. You don't understand what's happening, Lila. You think this is about love or trust, but it's bigger than that. There are people involved who don't want their names on this. Madison went too far. She used me, too. The way he said it, smooth, calm, rehearsed, was infuriating. It was the same strategy he'd always used. Partial guilt, selective remorse, just enough truth to make the lies sound credible. He took a step forward, lowering his voice as though we were co-conspirators instead of enemies. You think I wanted to hurt you? She planned half of it. She said we could get out clean, that it would all look like your fault, but then she got greedy. She started keeping things from me, taking money. I was trying to fix it before it got worse. I stared at him, disgust mixing with disbelief. You're blaming her now? The woman you cheated with? The woman you planned all this with? He met my gaze evenly. You think she's your friend? She's not. She never was. She recorded you first. She's the one who sent me those videos of you in the house. For a second, the world tilted. It was the kind of statement meant to destabilize, to make me question what I knew. And I almost fell for it. Almost. But then I remembered Harris's words. He'll spin it until you doubt gravity itself. Don't engage. Just document. So I did. I slipped my hand behind me, tapping the record button on my phone without breaking eye contact. The soft vibration confirmed it was running. My voice came out calm, almost detached. You're saying Madison set you up too? He nodded, his tone softening, manipulative tenderness creeping back into his words. We both got caught in something bigger. You have no idea how far this goes, Lila. They're watching me now, too. You can help me fix it. We can start over, disappear for a while. Disappear? I repeated. You mean run? He moved closer again, his face inches from mine now, and I could see the flicker of frustration breaking through the charm. Don't twist this, he hissed. You're recording me, aren't you? The question hit like a bullet. For a split second, I froze. Then his eyes darted toward the counter, to the faint red light glowing from my phone screen. The calm vanished. He lunged. I turned to grab it, but he was faster. His hand closed around my wrist, the other snatching for the phone. The cord ripped from the wall, clattering against the tile. I struggled, adrenaline surging through my veins. You don't get to control the truth anymore, I shouted. He tightened his grip, face twisted, voice low and dangerous. You think you can ruin me after everything I've done for you? The world shrank to sound and motion, the thud of footsteps, the crash of something falling, my own heartbeat roaring in my ears. He yanked the phone from my hand and threw it across the room. It hit the wall with a crack, the screen spidering into a web of light. I stumbled backward, my shoulder hitting the edge of the table. Then silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. He stood there, chest heaving, realizing what he'd done. His eyes darted toward the shattered phone, the red recording light still blinking faintly through the cracks. His lips parted like he wanted to speak, to fix it, to rewrite the story one last time. But before he could say anything, a distant sound broke through the stillness, sharp, rising, unmistakable. Sirens. For the first time, his confidence cracked completely. He turned toward the door, panic flickering across his face. I stood frozen, my body trembling, but my mind finally fiercely clear. The next sound I heard wasn't his voice. It was sirens. Justice doesn't always arrive in a courtroom. Sometimes it walks in with a police badge. The red and blue lights painted my living room in flashes of truth. When the officers burst through the front door, everything that had felt endless finally stopped moving. Cole froze, mid-step, his face drained of all color. The same mouth that had spun so many lies opened like he wanted to speak. But for once, no words came out. The sirens that had cut through the night grew quieter as the officers took control, their voices calm, practiced, firm. They separated us without question, one guiding me toward the kitchen while the other ordered him to keep his hands visible. I could still hear my phone crackling on the floor, its screen fractured but alive, the recording still blinking faintly. Ma'am, are you hurt? The officer asked me, his tone professional but soft. I shook my head, unable to find words. I wasn't hurt, not physically, but something deeper inside me felt torn open. He guided me to sit down while another officer examined the shattered phone, careful to preserve it. It's all on there, I whispered finally. Everything. Cole tried to speak. Then the same charm he'd used 100 times creeping back into his voice. This is a misunderstanding, he said. She's unstable. The officer cut him off sharply. Save it for your statement, sir. Hearing those words felt like air after drowning. For the first time in months, I wasn't the one defending myself. I watched them handcuff him, the metallic snap echoing like punctuation on a nightmare that had gone on too long. As they led him out, he turned once, his eyes dark, his mouth curving into something between a smirk and a warning. But the sight of the police car door closing behind him erased its power. At the station, the hours blurred into questions and signatures. The detectives were methodical but kind. The evidence from my phone, the recordings, the footage, the hotel receipts, all aligned too perfectly for denial. When they played back the audio I'd captured, the room fell silent. His voice filled the space, smooth and deliberate, admitting just enough to expose everything. And when Madison's name came up, they moved quickly. A warrant followed within the hour. The next morning, I was called back in to give a formal statement. The hotel manager, Brian, met me there. He looked older, tired, guilt shadowing his eyes. I'm sorry, he said quietly. When he first came in, he said it was a surprise for you. I didn't know. His testimony sealed the final gap, the financial link between Cole's fraudulent charges and Madison's involvement. When it was done, I sat in the hallway outside the interrogation room, watching officers move in and out with quiet efficiency. The hum of printers, the click of keyboards, it all sounded distant, unreal. Justice wasn't loud or cinematic. It was paperwork, signatures, the slow machinery of truth grinding forward. By the time I walked out into the daylight, I felt hollow. Relief didn't come as joy. It came as stillness. My body ached from the tension finally leaving it. I cried in the car, not out of sadness, but because I could. Because for the first time in what felt like forever, no one was watching, recording, or scripting what I did next. The weeks that followed were strange, a mix of healing and detachment. I went to therapy, something I'd resisted for too long. My therapist said trauma rewires the way we see ourselves, that sometimes recovery isn't about forgetting, but about reclaiming the narrative. I started small. I changed my locks. I changed my number. I even changed the scent of my shampoo, as if washing away the last trace of him from my life. Madison was arrested a week later. Her lawyer claimed she'd been manipulated by Cole, but the emails and recordings told another story. They had both played their parts, and now both would face the consequences. When the detective called to confirm the charges, I thanked him, though the word felt too small for what I meant. Justice wasn't clean. It didn't erase the past, but it was. Enough to start breathing again. One quiet evening, I sat at my desk, the laptop open in front of me. The USB, the one that had started everything, was still there, untouched since the chaos. Harris had told me to keep it safe, but I couldn't resist. I needed to see it one last time, to close the loop. I plugged it in, the familiar chime echoing through the room. The files appeared again, the same names, the same folders. But now there was something new. One video I hadn't opened before, time-stamped the night of his arrest. My pulse quickened as I clicked it. The footage began with static, then focused on Cole's face, filmed in low light. He was speaking directly into the camera, his expression calm, almost tender. "If you're watching this," he said, "then you think you've won, but you don't understand. None of this was ever really about you." I froze, unable to look away. He smiled then, that same slow, unsettling smile. "She'll know what I mean," he whispered. "This message isn't for you." My skin prickled as the video ended abruptly, the screen fading to black. The silence in the room felt heavier than before, as if the story wasn't over yet. He'd left one final message, and it wasn't meant for me. The final truth didn't destroy me. It rebuilt me. For days after watching that last video, I couldn't sleep. Cole's face haunted every flicker of shadow in my apartment, his voice echoing in my head like a riddle that refused to end. "This message isn't for you." I replayed the clip so many times I started memorizing the pauses between his words, the smirk that lingered too long, the way his eyes darted slightly to the side, as if he wasn't talking to the camera, but to someone standing just out of frame. I took the video to Harris, my lawyer, who had it analyzed. His call came 3 days later. "You were right," he said. "That recording wasn't new. It was spliced together from older footage, but the metadata, there's something else." My heart thudded in my chest. "What?" "The original files came from different devices. Not just yours. There are other women." The words knocked the air out of me. Other women. It wasn't just me or Madison or some elaborate one-time con. He had done this before. Different names, different setups, the same manipulation. Harris had cross-referenced the financial data the police found in Cole's accounts. There were multiple insurance claims, smaller amounts spread across years, each connected to a woman who had been close to him. Women who'd filed restraining orders, women who'd left their jobs, women who'd simply vanished from the records after a scandal. He hadn't just been building a life with lies, he'd been running a business out of them. That realization didn't break me, it clarified me. For months I had been trapped in the wreckage of what he did to me, ashamed, terrified, uncertain. But now I saw the pattern. The machinery of it all. He was a predator dressed in charm, rehearsing sincerity like a monologue. The cruelty wasn't personal, and somehow that made the anger easier to carry. I spent that night combing through everything, emails, account logs, backup drives the police had returned. In one folder, buried deep in a string of encrypted files, I found what looked like a contact list. 10 names, 10 women. Next to each was a timestamp, a dollar amount, and a short description. Mine was labeled L. Insurance, emotional instability claim. Ready. The sight made my stomach turn, but it also gave me purpose. The next morning, I sent the entire folder to Harris and to the lead detective. But I didn't stop there. I created an anonymous email account and attached the evidence with a short message. You're not alone. He did it to me too. One by one, I sent it to every woman on that list. For a long time, there was silence. Then the replies started coming. One woman wrote, I thought no one would believe me. Thank you. Another sent back, he ruined my life. I'm ready to testify. Each message felt like another thread binding the truth together. The more I read, the lighter I felt, as though the story that had once caged me was finally turning outward, becoming something bigger than pain. It was justice, not in a courtroom sense, but in a collective one, an invisible network of women reclaiming the voices he'd tried to erase. Weeks passed. The media picked up the case. Headlines called it a corporate fraud ring, an emotional exploitation scheme. Cole and Madison were indicted together. The company issued public apologies. Lauren resigned quietly, her involvement minimized but undeniable. I didn't attend the hearings. I didn't need to. Watching him lose everything from a distance was enough. Justice doesn't always need an audience. Sometimes it just needs to exist. Therapy helped me rebuild the parts of myself I'd forgotten how to touch. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. The first piece I finished was a canvas of broken glass reflecting a single unblinking eye. My therapist asked me what it meant, and I told her it wasn't about fear. It was about clarity, about finally seeing without distortion. I moved apartments, cut my hair, and stopped checking over my shoulder. Trust didn't come back all at once. It crept in slowly, disguised as quiet mornings, long walks, and laughter that didn't feel rehearsed. I learned that healing isn't the absence of scars. It's learning to wear them without shame. One evening, months later, I found the USB again, tucked in the back of a drawer. For a moment, I considered throwing it away, but instead, I plugged it in one last time. The files were still there, untouched. The difference was me. I no longer felt fear opening them. I scrolled through the folders until I reached the one titled Home. The footage began just like before, me in my living room, unaware. But this time I noticed something I hadn't before. In the reflection of the window behind me, another figure moved across the glass. Someone standing outside, watching. It wasn't Cole. It was Madison. That small detail changed everything I thought I knew about how it started. She hadn't just helped him. She had found me for him. I watched the last frame fade into static, and for the first time, I didn't flinch. That past version of me on the screen wasn't a victim anymore. She was the reason I survived. I closed the laptop, exhaled, and looked around the room that was finally entirely mine. The story had taken everything from me, but it had given me something rarer in return: conviction. The kind that doesn't depend on anyone else's version of the truth. Maybe the truth didn't collapse my world. Maybe it finally cleared the ruins so I could rebuild. What would you have done if the hotel handed you that key card? If this story hit a nerve, tell me the exact moment you felt the switch from trust to suspicion. Drop your timestamp in the comments and share what you would have done if you were in her place. Would you have opened a USB or walked away? Share this video with someone who needs a reminder to trust their instincts, and don't forget to subscribe for more first-person psychological thrillers every week. If you want a part 2, where I break down the hidden red flags you might have missed, comment red flags below, and I'll make it happen.